Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around fancy Premier League. My name's Such.
And my name is James.
Cool. James, the time is ticking. 20 minutes. Let's go.
Yes, welcome to Match of the Day. You okay, boss?
20 minutes is never long enough, James. But it's definitely long enough when I'm concerned. I don't know about you. No, you go on longer than me, James. So
we could barely keep one game within 20 minutes half the time. So
yes, indeed. Another FPL week is not over, I should say, because there's still a double game week to go. We've still got two fixtures.
Thank God.
In Brighton at home to Crystal Palace and Southampton at home to Brentford to go. And I think those two fixtures will still have quite a bearing on how this week plays out. But another interesting weekend of football has passed, James. And here we go to review it again. I think for a lot of people who were on wildcard from last game, week 26, and hadn't done so well, and obviously you being in that boat, you can give an opinion on it. It felt like, let's wait until the second week and the third week, and then we'll decide how it's actually planned out. And after the Bournemouth-Liverpool game, I'm thinking, well, all the people that got rid of their Liverpool assets are probably sitting pretty now, and they're the wildcarders. I don't think many people would have come off a wildcard last week with many Liverpool assets. They blank next week, right? So I was thinking very early into this game week that wildcarders might have a little bit of a bounce back and a bit of revenge, but it didn't quite play out like that.
No, I mean, it's subject to everybody's own teams and stuff. I haven't quite had the bounce back yet myself. I mean, what I would say is, I think for me, I would judge it at the end of game week 30, probably, because a lot of my strategy in terms of my picks on wildcard for 26 was factoring up a 5-game week period, including game week 30. So it's probably only at the end of that I'll probably judge it. But the start hasn't been great. I mean, what a lot of people probably found this week was, last week it was, sold Liverpool, they went off. This week, it was probably sold Arsenal or benched Arsenal. 60% of the top 10K benched Gabriel. So that's giving me some solace. I'm not the only dickhead, right?
60% of the top 10K benched Gabriel. If they
owned
him.
60% of the top 10K who owned Gabriel, benched him. Yes, correct. So even good FPL players benched those 14 points as well. I mean, I don't know if they had him third on the bench like I did, but yeah, fortunately, he was the only one on the bench that did go off. So I'd probably still sit here and say, yeah, it's right for me to hold the bench boost to game week 29. But I know a lot have obviously done it this week. I say a lot, that's probably not quite right. A number have done it this week and done quite well, actually. But yeah, there's a lot of people. Half the chat on our Slack yesterday was stay at my bench. And everyone was like, yeah, I've got more. Yeah, I've got more. There will be some big scoring bench scores this week, no doubt about it, which is why a number of people obviously did pull the trigger this week.
Indeed. What transfers did you make in the end then?
Oh God, that's testing me, isn't it? -4. Raya for Sanchez.
Yeah,
was straightforward for me, but it was part Raya for Sanchez to open up another Brighton spot. So that opened me up Odegaard to Mitoma. So the returns on that yet, considering obviously I would have played Kepa if I didn't buy Raya, the returns on that are not back yet. I'm technically -1 down, but obviously with a game to go for Raya and Mitoma over the other two. So every chance that'll pay. He's not been a brilliant start for me this game week. I'm on 44 points. Ollie Watkins 8, Alexis McAllister 7, Mitoma 6, Trippier 5. I do have 6 to go, so treble Brighton, Dunk, McAllister, Mitoma, treble Brentford, Raya, Henry, and captain Tony. So look, we sat here 2 weeks ago after the Liverpool and Arsenal double game week, and sat here on the Monday and went, it's not a lot happening there for people. And by the Thursday, it was like, boom, average scores were absolutely massive, right? So yeah, judge it when the week's over.
You said you captain Tony, right?
I captain Tony, yeah.
Tony. Yeah, I think there's going to be a reckoning on Wednesday on people that have gone with a Brighton midfielder versus people that have gone with Tony. I think that's where you could see some swings happening, because I went with the Brighton midfielder over Tony. And if Brighton do well again and Tony blanks, then the gap's going to widen, but it could just as easily swing the other way with that. And I feel like Tony's due a bit of a haul or some points this week.
Thanks, boss.
Well, look, I own him, but I didn't captain him. I gave him the vice. I ended up making 3 transfers for a -4. I had 2 frees. A couple that were really on the cards were Odegaard and Pereira to McAllister and Mitoma. Now that's paid off so far. And then I was debating Haaland to Ivan Toney as well, being that he had a double now and a double in 29, where I'm going to use my bench boost, and Haaland's just got the 1 fixture between them. So that hasn't paid off yet. So I'm 4 down on that. But net, I think that's going to come back and be okay. I captained Mitoma over McAllister. I just decided that there's something about his explosiveness that I like with Mitoma. So I went with that. At the moment, there's 6 points versus 7, so there's no big difference in it. I mean, it could have been Solly March. So let's not kick that cat right now. Because that will upset a lot of people.
For the people who are still claiming it, like, it's very clear on the FPL website, an hour after the game, that's it. So you can even if you turn around today and go, oh yeah, it was March's got it, ain't changing it. Get about it.
No. But I think I played Ben White, and that was 6 points. And I got the assist for Trippier. The man that was a big difference maker for me was the one that I'd held for the Nottingham Forest at home game, James, which just looked too tasty, especially after I'd seen us demolish them 4-0. As Expressions Oozing calls him, Harry, Class A, mate. 2 goals, 13 points. He just keeps giving.
I mean, look, the 3 goals that hurt my game week the most, I cheered all of them. The 2 Harry Kane goals, obviously, and Haaland's goal against Crystal Palace, because 20 minutes ago, I'm thinking, you need to win City. So I was well happy when that went in as well. So yeah, I mean, that was obviously going against those 2 was the big gamble of my wild card. But I'd said that I thought this would be the worst week of it. I was always prepared this would be the worst week of those 2 players. And actually, Watkins has obviously matched Haaland's total over the 2 weeks. Yep. It's just unfortunate that I haven't had anything else to match Harry's, basically. And that's the difference in my week.
Yep. So we march on. We still got these 2 games left to go as we go into game week 28. I am missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of my team don't have a fixture this week, which means I'm on the old free hit. James.
You definitely doing it?
Yeah, I've got. I can't not. At the moment, as it stands, the players that are missing a fixture are Van Dijk and Salah, Rashford, my 3 Brighton, and Rico Lewis. Like my 3 Brighton, they're all players that are startable players. They're not just not like my bench fodder that's not got a fixture. So yeah, there's no way that I won't be. The only Nico Williams. If your team was Kepa, Ben White, Trippier, Nico Williams, Saka, Kane, Toney, that's only 7 players. Not worth it. I need to free hit this week. And
okay, fair enough. Are you targeting to bench boost 29?
Yes.
Still?
Yeah. And I'll make 2 transfers to fix Rico Lewis and Nico Williams in 29. I've got some money in the bank, 4.6 million in the bank to upgrade both of those. And then off we go. So yeah.
How many singlers in 29 for you? Is it just the Arsenal players, is it?
No. Harry.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Hasn't got. I need FPL.team up in front of me, James. I didn't have it open.
Maybe I should look at your team and bloody help you.
Yes, you should. I don't even know my team ID.
So you've got White, Saka, Harry Kane. Looks like the rest. If you move, I mean, Williams has got a double, but it's probably not starting. Lewis has got a single. So you're probably looking at a bench boost, aren't you, of Kane, Saka, and White?
Are you? You want me to put those 3 on the bench?
Well, would they be your 3 weakest players? I mean, you can put what you want on the bench, but I think it's all right having the shithousery. The reality is, you're free to actually properly judge a bench boost. You should put the 3 weakest on the bench. We know people won't do that. People will put the likes of Salah and Rashford on the bench. And, oh my God, that's good 40 on bench boost. But that's not what it's actually about, is it?
Yeah. And then we'll see when we come out the other side in game week 30 whether or not I'm going to be wildcarding. But I'd like to wildcard more into some doublers when we know what 32 looks like and that kind of thing. The challenge out of wildcard when I come out the other side is obviously the Liverpool Arsenal fixture. I've got 4 from that one game in game week 30.
So you're looking to wildcard in 30?
No, not necessarily. But if I have problems or I feel like I know what 32 is going to look like and I can make some gains, that's where I look at it. Because we're still talking about Brighton having a double in 30 or 31, right?
Most likely 31, I think. But that's also...
so I want to hold on to those guys for sure.
That's also subject to the cup results this weekend. I mean, should Brighton +1 or Man United or Man City suddenly lose, that's a whole different conversation very suddenly, right?
But as it stands, I'm sticking to my strategy. There's the only other strategy would be to wildcard this week and get players that have a game in 28 and a double.
I think you should consider 29.
It.
What you need to work out is where's your biggest problem essentially. So if you wildcard now, you can get, you can target sort of Newcastle, Villa, Chelsea, 3 good examples. You can still have some Arsenal, etc. To take you through the 2 game weeks. Whereas obviously if you free hit now and then 29, still the question would be, how are you covering 32, 34 when it's highly likely that the teams in double in 34, other than probably Liverpool, are going to blank in 32 that's of interest to you? So how are you still going to maneuver both of those 2 weeks? Whereas actually 28, 29, you can definitely maneuver through it. No doubt. Brentford also have a game and a double. They're not the only ones. Leicester also have a game and a double. There are a number of teams that you can target to take you through. It's probably more the question is, do you want to invest in those teams? We're not talking about any of the big 6 other than Chelsea, right? Who have not performed like a big 6 team this year, but then Newcastle have, right? So it's about weighing it up. I think you should consider it. So it's just not saying you should do it. If you think free hit's right for you, do it. And for many people, it'll be the right decision this week. But just double check back on yourselves. 32 versus 34. How are you maneuvering that?
Look, teams like Brighton, no game in 32, but a double in 34. What do we do, right?
Your priority, if you free hit in 28, your priority from game week 29 onwards is Liverpool. Almost definitely, because they're likely to double in 34. Great fixture 32. So they become your priority. But do you get sidetracked if, say, Newcastle Brighton does end up in 31? For example. So, just work it out and consider. There's no right or wrong. There's no, I've got to do it this way or you should do it that way. Just consider it. That's all. It might be that wildcarding is better for you. It might even be that just sucking up this week and going, I'm going to go with 7 or 8. Because you can always take a hit now and buy a couple of players who've got doubles in, if you're saying you're going to fix Lewis and Williams, you could just fix them now and say, right.
I'd probably
I'm going with 8 or something like that, for example. Just
my plan was always possibly Mings and another.
In terms of like, what do you need this week? One of the things I've said about on my strategy of carrying through this week is I wanted to have a team that I thought would be competitive with 3 hitters this week. So it's worth asking ourselves, what do 3 hitters do this week? Right, for me, there's definitely probably Kieran Trippier. I mean, everybody who 3 hits this week would have Kieran Trippier. Most people got him anyway, right? Definitely something Chelsea defensive, even if that's just Kepa. I think there's something Chelsea defensive. Watkins will be very popular. Judging by polls over the weekend, it looks like Harry Kane will probably be the most captain player in game week 28. And obviously, there's going to be a heavy load of Arsenal offensive players. So what do you actually need this week? Well, you've got bits of that already, haven't you? So you've got Trips, you've got Harry Kane, you've got White and Saka from Arsenal. Have you got any Villa?
I've got Kepa.
You've got Chelsea defensive. So in terms of the essentials, you've got a bit of something. Now, it might be one where you have to look at it and go, I should accept the red arrow here. Because you're not going to beat it, right? Whatever you go with, it's almost impossible you're going to beat a 3 hit team unless you go against, say, Kane or Saka.
I've got Tony, by the way, at Leicester at home as well.
You go with Tony captain and he suddenly bangs rather than 3 hitters, right? Otherwise, you're not going to beat it. But it's okay to accept that. if that's the right for your process going on to other weeks. I think free hitters this week, there's every chance I think it's possible people will go double Newcastle defensive, double Chelsea defensive, and it'll certainly be free Arsenal for free hitters this week. So that's going to be the main makeup. Most are going to go Watkins, most are going to go Kane. That's just kind of a rough idea of what free hit teams are going to look like, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's every argument. If I got rid of Rico Lewis and picked up Ben Chilwell and got rid of Van Dijk, who doesn't have a fixture this week, for example, and picked up Tyrone Mings, I'll end up with 9 players this week, and that's just one hit, and go with it. And captain Kane, I've got Saka, I've got decent enough players to cover it off. There is an argument to say go with 9 and captain Kane.
Yeah. Listen, you do that, you could beat me, because I won't be going into this week with Harry Kane. I'm not suddenly, oh my God, he scored twice against Forest, I'm going to get him back. No, I've picked my strategy and I'm gonna get on with it. You mentioned Ben Chilwell, Suj. Yeah, I bought him last night, mate.
You did, yeah?
Yeah, it's clear enough for me. I bought him in for Lewis Dunk last night, which takes me back to 11 for this game week. And part of the reason for deciding to go early on it had a couple of important factors in it. One, obviously, Chelsea don't have a fixture this week. There's zero threat, I think, to Ben Chilwell starting that game against Everton.
Wow.
Unless he gets injured in midweek. Yeah, we know that.
In the canteen, what I'm saying is, he fucking trips over a fork or something.
What I'm saying is I don't have to get through a Chelsea fixture first, right? They don't play this week. Listen, that can happen to anyone at any time, right?
Yeah, freak injury.
The selling of Dunk was looking back at Brighton and actually just judging it again. Do you know what? There's not massive returns here for the Brighton defensive. And it might be that I come back for Dunker and his Stupinan in 29. I could make that decision. But selling him opens up Ferguson in case I have an Iheanacho problem, which I probably do have, to be honest. Also opens up going Solly March, which is possibly more interesting considering where Bruno Fernandes played yesterday and may continue to play, considering Casemiro's red card, because part of my strategy was to buy Fernandes in 29. So I may need to reassess that.
4-game ban for Casemiro, mate.
I need to, I've opened back up my option to change what I want from Brighton, basically. And also, really importantly, you go, what if you get another injury, James? Well, if I get another injury, 100% I will take -4. Absolutely. So I know there was a little bit of speculation about James Maddison at the weekend, who came off in injury time or sort of 90th minute against Chelsea. I know there were 1 or 2 people said he looked like he was hobbling through the end of the game. And we know he's carrying an injury anyway. If suddenly I hear, right, James Maddison's, I'll take -4. Because I'll get a player who's got a fixture this week and a double 29. So I'm still going to do it. If I got 2 players injured this week, I'll take a -8. Because the game on the hit is certainly coming back over the course of the 2 game weeks if someone's out for 3 weeks or so. If it's Maddison's a doubt, that I'm probably going to leave it, aren't I? And it will be what it will be. But if there's no knowledge, then yeah, I'm going to do something about it. So I've got going into this week be Kepa and Chilwell, double Chelsea, Trippier and Botman, double Newcastle, Gabriel and Saka, Arsenal, Henry and Tony, Brentford, Maddison, Iheanacho, Leicester, Watkins, Villa. I will probably captain Saka, but I wouldn't even rule out captain Chilwell. I mean, Chilwell, Trippier, Watkins all under consideration for that as well for me. But I will probably go Saka.
I definitely think this is a week to take a deep breath and it will be what it will be. Have a look at what it does to you either side as well. Should we talk about some of these games, James?
Talking of transfers, though, very quickly.
Yeah,
I noticed something, Suj, which I wanted to ask you about because it's very unusual for you. Your free transfers were made at about 1:20 in the morning.
Yes.
That's not normal for you.
No.
Did you wake up in a sweat or something?
No. I'd looked at it the night before. It was like, actually, yes, that's exactly what happened. I woke up in a sweat. But
did you really?
Yeah. Well, no, that's not even what happened. My wife woke up in a sweat, kicked me, and said, "The heating's on. Can you turn the heating off?" I'd been in bed at like 10:30, 11. I was looking at FPL statistics to see who was going up and who was going down in price based on the players that I own. Like, it looked like Van Dijk's price was going to change on Friday night, which was bizarre. So then I left it. I was dozing. And And then my wife at like 1:20 in the morning, it's like, it's really hot. The heating's like triggered on. Can you switch the heating off? So yeah, fine. I was groggy. Switch the heating off. It was like 1 in the morning. So then I started, I forgot I was going to make my transfers on Friday night, checking on the price changes. And 10 minutes later, I'm on my phone, like half blind, because you're groggy in the middle of the night. It's like, the fuck are you doing? I was like, I'm making my FPL transfers. I got a kick in the leg, made my transfers, and then went back to sleep. So yes, I did wake up in a sweat because
I knew something was wrong. I knew it because I don't think I'd ever seen you make an FPL transfer at that time before.
Never. So yeah, and I got all 3 done. And whether or not, if I'd have done it at a sensible hour, I would have had the cojones to do the Haaland to Tony. I'm not sure, but I did it anyway. Done with it. It kind of made sense.
I thought it was the right move, and I think a lot now, even more so, who's still got Haaland are now obviously it's been going every week. There's some who come off 26, some who come off before 27. There'll be others who come off this week as well. So the reality is, if you're sitting there with Haaland and you haven't got Ollie Watkins, you've got a great fixture this week. He's got an extra fixture 29 as well. Like, what are we holding for? The value. You also want to hold through, if you're not free hitting this week, you want to hold through like your Rashfords and your Brighton assets to play them in 29. Something has to be sacrificial, and I think Haaland is right near the top of that, to be honest.
So based on the fact that we're saying that, and obviously we know that every FPL player listens to the podcast, what's Haaland's ownership now, James? I've got it in front of me, so have a stab.
What overall in the game? I'm not bothered about overall. I'd be more interested live, but overall he's probably about 77 or something like that. I don't know.
82.5%.
Still. Yeah, but what's Gabriel Jesus' ownership? It's still about 30% or something, isn't it?
Probably. And that's because of our dead league, James. But yeah. Cool. Talking about you saying that I might need to target Liverpool if that's my strategy, and I'm wildcarding after game week 29 to 30 or 31. Are you sure? Bournemouth 1, Liverpool 0.
Well, I don't know. This time last week it was, how can you go against Liverpool players, right? So
this could have been so different. Like Salah puts that penalty away.
Well, of course.
And suddenly I've opened up quite a bit of ground, and I think I'd be touching top 100k. I've never had a 5-figure rank in this game, mate. Never.
Well, this year,
since we started the pod, never have. I'm at 175 now. It's got to happen.
This year it's point. Oh no, you fucked it up now, wouldn't you? But you'll do something silly, like go to free hit this week, and on like Friday night you'll message me and go, James, I forgot there's a Friday night game.
Is there a Friday night game?
Yes, mate.
Okay. Noted.
So you on a Friday afternoon trying to figure out your free hit. Yeah, I can see how this goes already, mate. That's the sort of thing that'll bite you in the bum. Liverpool. Yeah, look, if Salah scores the penalty, there's every chance they go on and win the game. Who knows? We'd never actually know. Liverpool have an issue, clearly, which we've known about all season, but it is beginning to look more
football.
Well, yeah, it's beginning to look more like a home and away issue. 12 points away from home, from 13 games, averaging less than a point per game. So we've got 2 different Liverpools here. We've seen the Liverpool play at Anfield. In reality, they've only lost once at home, right? Lost to Leeds. Yeah, but they've beaten Man City, destroyed Manchester United, they've beaten Newcastle, they drew 0-0 with Chelsea. Like, their home performances in terms of results, not terrible, not what you'd expect Liverpool in terms of winning a league, but they've lost one home game. Well, they lost under Klopp, one home game in about 4 years in front of a crowd, right? So that was it against Leeds. But away from home, 3 away wins. And interestingly, 2 of those against teams that they're in direct competition with at the moment, Newcastle and Tottenham, right? The Newcastle game, you could say heavily influenced by the red card to Nick Pope, but in fairness, they were 2-0 up at that point anyway. So that's interesting that even Newcastle, Tottenham in 2 of the away wins suggests there's a mentality issue to me. Has to be. Yeah,
quite possibly. I was really surprised. This kind of caught my eye on Sky more than it did in FPL first, and I doubled back to have a look. I was looking at the defenders in Sky, and Van Dijk is the top point scorer. I was like, how has a Liverpool defender become the top point scorer in this game? So I thought, okay, it doesn't feel like they've been keeping a lot of clean sheets. It doesn't feel like they've been attacking returns. It doesn't feel like he's had a lot of goals or
What
what
were you
have
looking
you.
at? Just one game week?
No, the season.
What are you talking about? What?
I'm
Are you
sure I
mad?
was confused. I didn't think
Trippier,
it was
Gabriel,
possible.
Saliba, White, Cher, Ben Mee have all got more than
Okay,
Van Dijk, mate.
maybe I had the filter wrong. But when I look back at FPL, okay, we've got Newcastle and Arsenal that we've known have been good all season. But then it is like Ben Mee's a bit of an anomaly this season. Then it is Van Dijk and Trent, and defensively they're still there picking up the points. They're still in the top 8, 9 defenders in the game.
But it's
Doesn't
March. And
feel like
they're under 100.
doesn't feel like
Considering their value and the
mm,
fact that these Van Dijk missed a small period because of injury, right? In the January period, actually didn't miss that many games. That they have well underperformed this year. So Van Dijk missed. I'm just looking at 5 games. Fine.
they've underperformed relative to Liverpool. They haven't underperformed relative to the other teams in the league. But
They've
then you look at
underperformed relative to how they performed in the past. We look
correct
at Trent
against
and
themselves.
Robertson and expect them to be near the 200-point mark.
But
Ain't
then
going to
you
be
look
anywhere
at
near it.
but I mean, City have been no better, City defenders, and then that's probably because we don't know who's playing week in, week out. But they're nowhere to be seen in the rankings.
Agreed.
Man United defenders nowhere to be seen in the rankings. So they're still there or thereabouts in terms of prior to this game was a number of 5 clean sheets in a row. Having said that, they lost. Big win for Bournemouth.
In
Big
fact,
win for
I
Bournemouth.
was just looking at the first page on FPL's website of defenders, and a Manchester City player does not appear on
Wow.
page 1. You've got the likes of Connor Cody, Anthony Robinson, Diogo Dalot, Ivan Perisic, Emerson Royal, James Tarkowski, Max Kilman, Timothy Castagne. Leicester haven't kept a clean sheet since the World Cup. Yeah, they're all in now. No, Man City have changed the team so much, haven't they? For Liverpool, obviously they ain't going to be a part of free hitters this week because obviously they blank. The Fulham fixture, as said previously, 34 is a little more likely than 37. So factor that into your thinking, because after the double, and it is a difficult double of obviously City away, Chelsea away, then they play Arsenal. Then till the end of the season, there is a very good stretch of fixtures. And if you're running through, Liverpool should be near the top of the agenda of your plans. For me, who will almost definitely free hit in 32, and the fact they play Forest at home and have away games either side in 31 and 33 beforehand, means that it might not be till 34 that I come back around for them. Plus, we've got Luis Diaz due back, which might have a little bit of an impact in terms of, say, Darwin Núñez's minutes, perhaps Gakpo's minutes. Kind of like to see it. Salah's are possible for me for 29 because the plan was Bruno Fernandes. But part of the plan was also to maneuver it so that if I had to steam into Salah and Haaland, i.e. 29 and then 30 respectively, that I could afford to do it. And I can. So it might be that it defaults to Mo Salah in 29 for me. And they're not terrible fixtures for him. That's all I'd say.
You've just talked about Jekyll and Hyde home and away. They're both away.
Yeah, but I think going to City and Chelsea, their mentality will be right.
Okay.
There's a mentality issue when they go into some of these places. I saw at the weekend, and this is whole of Jurgen Klopp's tenure, right? That during his whole tenure, 7.5 years, they've lost more games to teams in the relegation zone than teams who have been in the top 4. There's not a small sample. It's not this season. That's over his whole tenure in charge. That if Liverpool played an opponent in the top 4, they performed better than an opponent in 18th, 19th, or 20th. That's crazy.
Yeah. Complacency definitely it smacks of
so I think it's a mentality issue, and my point is I don't think there'll be a mentality issue for the City and Chelsea games. And again, look, Salah scores the penalty here, then they're up. They probably go and win the game from there, potentially. They did have chances in the game, but clearly not at their best. They certainly allowed Bournemouth good counter-attacking situations, as per seen from the goal. Dominic Solanke's link up in terms of the way he stepped off the front and brought people into play was really good. Thought he had quite an impressive game. He's an interesting one, actually. 5.5, particularly say people maybe got Brennan Johnson, who might be an injury doubt now, and don't have the money in the bank, going, shit, I need to take a hit to deal with this. Well, Dominic Solanke offers you an interesting alternative where they play Villa this week, 2 home games in the double, Fulham and Brighton, and actually their fixture run really improves Bournemouth. And we've got to look at them and say they've just played Arsenal, City, Liverpool, and they've not been terrible in them. They got well beat by City. They obviously give Arsenal a real test.
Scare, yeah.
And they beat Liverpool, and they changed the system. It was more of a 4-4-1-1, with the one supporting the one being Philip Billing, who's 5.1, and is another one who might solve a brief problem for people. I think he's a difficult get because of the pricing of Brighton players, for example. But he's another one, if you're carrying through, solves a problem for you. I think he's a good one for free hitters to potentially stick even on the bench this week. And I know people fear that. Oh, I don't want points on my bench on a free hit. Yeah, but say if you're going for Maddison and suddenly he's not in the team, someone like that's decent cover for you potentially.
Agreed.
So I'd consider that. And Utura at 5.0, who missed the absolute sitter when he walked around Alisson and took too heavy a touch at 0-0. He's also a really interesting one. He's explosive. I think that the three of them attacking options are quite interesting. I don't think anybody would be looking for a defensive one, but Neil Grover may tell us different on Thursday's Clash of Correspondents. Neto does well in goal, to be fair, but I think, it's not that much more for the likes of Kepa and Raya and stuff like that at the moment. So probably largely being overlooked. Liverpool missed Henderson a bit, I think. And the reason I say that is his mentality is right. Yeah. He had a little bit of a cold. Not that Bacesic was bad. He's done really well when he's played for them. But I think they missed him a little bit. I think what I would say is I think Liverpool will have a storming run at the end of the season.
Everton 1, Brentford 0. I mean, we both said that on the differential show on Friday that we do for patrons, where we preview the games a little bit, that on paper Brentford should win and they're the better team in better form. But Dyche is Dyche, and you can see, like, I thought it might end up being a 1-1 or something like that. Well, Dyche is Dyche, and a clean sheet and a home win for Everton. Dwight McNeil back on the score sheet. He loves his old boys, doesn't he, Sean Dyche? Maybe he should come and buy Maxwell Cornet off us, mate, to be honest with you, because despite him getting a few minutes, it's only a couple of games till he's injured again. But yeah, Everton picking up a win, and this relegation battle at the bottom of the table. I mean, they're clear now.
It's now 5 points between the 8 teams. It was 6 points last week. So
it's very narrow, but they are out of the relegation zone. And psychologically, that makes a big difference.
Consider as well, in the Southampton are bottom of that, and they play twice in the next 7 days, where a team like yourselves just doesn't play. So it could get even tighter, right?
Yeah.
Third 1-0 win for Sean Dyche's Everton. And I don't think even those who captain Tony like I did are not shocked. It wasn't like, I can't see that happening. It's like, yeah, I can see that happening. The goal was great play, particularly by Alex Iwobi. I know it's really, really well finished by Dwight McNeil, but Iwobi's role right early in the game to recognise the importance of the second ball and play the pass first time, it literally doesn't happen without his involvement from there. And it was a really good goal. Brentford are one of the best in this league at dealing with second balls. Everton essentially beat them off a second ball right at the start of the game. What I didn't expect from my 3 Brentford assets, Serge, was for all 3 of them to be in a position where they should score headers in the game. That includes my 2 defensive players, which also includes my fucking goalkeeper. David Raya had a higher XG than probably about 80% of the league at the weekend, because he certainly should have hit the target with a header. He had an injury time, which would have been FPL folklore stuff. For a popular asset to score a goalkeeper in a double game week would be something. But Rico Henry was the biggest miss of all. However, I had nothing out of him in the 2 games so far. I mean, that's got to be return imminent. I feel like, even though Leicester at home and then Brentford's double's not great in 29, not sure I want to move that. He gets so advanced. Really does. I think he's an interesting differential one, maybe, because free hitters will probably largely skip that. I wouldn't rule out someone like him actually at the weekend. Probably another one to sit as cover on the bench maybe this weekend.
Good price.
Tony didn't have a huge number of chances. He had one in the first half where I think normally he gets on the end of it, actually a really good cross in from the right. So look, they could get beat 1-0 again at Southampton in midweek, or they could go there, play really well and get the result. It's only their 5th defeat of the season. It was only Arsenal's 2nd defeat or so at the season when they lost at Goodison, I want to say, maybe 3rd. And I'd worry about my team going there in game week 29, which I guess Kane bench boosters should be aware of. Should also be aware we may get beat at Southampton at the weekend as well. Yeah, I think I've probably got the right Brentford free. I don't want double defensive in the really long term. So Henry at some point probably out. But it could be that Raya to kind of move back to Allison or something like that might be something I look at further along the line. Yeah, there's a near miss for Brentford assets at the weekend. Everton were much better in the first, but Brentford certainly had the better chances in the second.
I'm not interested in Everton. I know you say, yeah.
I was just going to say Damsgaard played in the front three. He played a deeper role against Fulham on the Monday night. Everton assets, yeah, you're not interested. You know the team. You know the team at Chelsea now.
Yeah,
that'll be the team.
It says it's copy paste.
Yeah, Godfrey will play at left back again. Keane will play again at centre back. It'll be the same team. He won't change it unless he's got an injury.
No. Leeds 2, Brighton 2. Desmond in the house. I mean, we thought Brighton would score goals, and they did pick up a couple of goals. But Leeds were able to put a couple on the score sheet as well, and it ends up being a draw. Rodrigo back on the bench, James Bamford in the starting 11. I think they missed Rodrigo for quite a while now, haven't they?
Yeah, well,
he was in such good form before.
They've missed the availability of both of them, actually, because I think they're obviously very different players and given decent options. They can, of course, play together. But I think it's probably noteworthy for those who may have been thinking, Bamford on a free hit or even to buy in, because obviously they do play in 28. The double in 29 is not the worst. I say that because although they go to Arsenal,
Forest at home.
Yeah, yeah, I'll get onto them in a bit because they were not good. So I think Leeds assets because of that might be of interest. I can't see me going near them personally, to be honest. Not seen enough, but they did do something extremely interesting tactically at the weekend, which I'm going to have a look at on Talking Tactics for our advanced tier patrons this week. They forced Roberto De Zerbi to change. And I know that from only having watched the highlights, and I intend to watch the whole game back. But obviously, if you want to see something unbelievable, watch the first minute of this game. It's incredible with the way Leeds go and press against Caicedo and Gross, Brighton's box. So what actually Brighton did is they moved Gross out of the box and pushed him high out and dropped McAllister kind of almost from a centre forward position, kind of more of an 8 position next to Gross. That's how it looked to me from the highlights. But Leeds reacted to that again as well. It was quite an interesting tactical one that I want to look at a little bit more, which I think the one thing we thought with Javi Gracia is, yeah, not bad at stopping opposition, actually. And it might be good for Leeds going forward in terms of when you've got a 6-pointer, he might be the difference that helps them get it, actually. And the return of these forward players is certainly going to help. The Brighton assets, it's Solly March owners are the ones who've been unlucky again this weekend. I'll be honest, I've watched the goal 20 times over and I can't tell whether it's March's goal or an own goal. My take probably would be just fucking give it to the attacking player, therefore.
Yeah, his intention is there, right?
But you're not gonna get it changed. It depends what angle you look at. People showing stills. What's all that about? It's like stills on red cards and stuff. People showing stills of Casemiro's challenge yesterday. I'm not interested in the still. We want to see the action. So stills of replays about, he touched it here and that. There's certain angles. There's one angle where it looks like he doesn't touch it at all, March. Yeah. There's another angle where it looks like he definitely does. And the best angle of the lot that would have been give us 100% clarity, Meslier steps across the line just as you would, at the moment, you would be able to tell whether he definitely did or didn't. So I don't think it could say with certainty. But he, McAllister, Mitoma, very good options. It won't not telling you anything you don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if McAllister and Mitoma blanked in midweek and March went off. Palace will make it very difficult for them on Wednesday.
I'd like Evan Ferguson to be the one that goes off, if you don't mind, James, because he's the one with the least ownership and he's sitting in my team.
Am I right in saying you've got no defensive coverage from Brentford or Brighton?
Correct.
It's interesting.
Correct.
So that's a big way I could catch you this week, actually, is if there's clean sheets for the two of them.
Yeah, there aren't many buzzing around though at the moment in terms of clean sheets.
Yeah, I've realised that. It's part why I've let Dunk go because, and to be honest with you, I know fine about stealing goal and stuff, and I don't think he was overly at fault for either goal. They're both obviously long range efforts, but it doesn't inspire me in confidence that Brighton are actually going to keep clean sheets. to be totally honest. And I still believe that at some point before the end of this season, Sanchez will get back in. I don't think that will be this midweek, although I would laugh if it was.
Yeah. So moving on to Leicester 1, Chelsea 3. The reason, obviously, the bottom of the table is concertinaed so much is that everybody has been kind of picking up points here or there. Bournemouth winning, but Southampton, Leeds, West Ham all drawing, Everton winning. Leicester, on the other hand, there's 4 defeats in a row, and so they've kind of slid where everyone else has kind of made up a bit of ground and overtaken them in the likes of Wolves that have jumped a fair bit up and Everton, but Leicester not so much. And yet they've been in and about games. They've been creating chances. They could have got something at Southampton the previous week, but they've been beaten comfortably here by Chelsea 3-1 in the end.
Yeah, I mean, the XG on this is really slanted because of one key moment, which was one of 3 chances created for Maddison. You could argue it might have been his 6th shot. He also had 5 shots in the game. Yes, another near miss for me. I'm not complaining. Maddison's dead ball free kick from the wide area, which was headed wide by Daniel Amati, which I don't know how he heads it wide because he's in the goal, basically. He does come across very fast, but just make sure you get over it and you can't miss, but he doesn't get enough on it. I mean, that XG was rated about 0.97, Suj.
Wow.
He's in the goal.
Yeah, that's a 2.52 versus 1.57. 2.52 for Leicester.
So, yeah, I think it was only Arsenal had a higher XG this weekend, but it's largely because of that. Take that 0.97 off and you've got a different football match, right? So we should always be careful when we judge that. You know, when we're looking at XG, okay, why? Was there a penalty, for example? When this one, you got one chance that was rated far higher than what they're saying is, if that cross comes in again another 99 times, 97 times he scores, right? So it's a massive chance, more than the penalty. Fast is obviously suspended for game week 28. I don't know if that's good news or bad news for Leicester. It might be good news for those who were plotting through and perhaps, like my wife, who still has Daniel Amati probably knocking about in her to say, oh, I'm playing this week. Like, you lucky. And obviously, to be fair, Amati did play this weekend gone because they played a back 3. Should also be noted, though, that Johnny Evans was back in the squad. And I suspect his leadership is becoming much needed in terms of organisation at the back. So I wouldn't be that surprised if they stuck around with a back 3 and tried to get Evans potentially either in the middle or to the left of that back 3. Though I also suspect the selection lineup might have been because of doubts about Harvey Barnes' fitness, although he was a used substitute. If you want Leicester players for this week, it's James Maddison and James Maddison only. Do check his fitness. He's one player I would not buy early this week.
Yeah.
We know he's carrying a problem, but we also know he is clear talisman in this team. How he has not returned over these last 2 games. Iheanacho did start. Him and Daka both started. I think they're probably avoidable now because that could be Daka scored a great goal at the weekend. Maybe it's Daka. Maybe decides to play Vardy. Iheanacho's one where when I went in for the Southampton game, right? And he missed the 3 big chances. Now it's looking like, I need to be cautious about that. I wouldn't move it this week as long as he's fit, because I think we can return off the bench fine. But for 29, I might need to keep my eye on that. But otherwise, I wouldn't particularly be bothering with Leicester. Chelsea are going to be of huge interest this week. Huge. Yep. And as I already said, I think Ben Chilwell's even potentially captainable this week. I really think that's a possibility. He's 5.8, so too is Reece James. Reece James missed the game due to illness, we think. But he's missed a lot of games recently, hasn't he? They obviously want to be extremely cautious with him. Now, for 29, I imagine Reece James will probably play against Everton. And I think for 3 hitters, I'd be very tempted to go with that, actually, if the signs look promising on Friday. You've got, obviously, Chilwell at the same price. I don't know how you would pick James over Chilwell. What did I say? Sorry.
29.
No, I think that James would be risky for 29. Certainly.
Right, okay. But he'll
for
play
28, I think you're fine. 29, the 3-day turnaround, I don't know if Reece James would play twice. So I don't know how you'd pick him over Chilwell at the moment. I picked up when they lost at Tottenham the other week and said then, in reaction to what I'd seen that day, definitely Chilwell over James. James got the brakes on. Now, it might be James plays at right wing back against Everton and gets so far forward there's every chance for you. I wouldn't say he's a bad one for free hitters at all. Fofana might have an issue. He's 4.3, and I think that's probably an annoying one because those who short money probably looking at going, I need to get some Chelsea defensive in here.
Some would have gone in on him already as well.
Yeah, they will have. I mean, he might have a problem. That's one also not to go early on, unfortunately. Enzo Fernandez, 5 million. It's cheap. If you're looking at something, as part of a bench boost, fifth midfielder further down the line, so just grimacing. I'm kind of in agreement.
5.1.
Yeah,
find the 0.1.
Yeah, but Solly March isn't playing this week. So
no, that's
if
true.
people are looking for something,
sure.
If people are looking running through particularly, then if you're making a choice, do you buy Fernandez or March this week? You buy Fernandez, don't you? Sterling 9.7 didn't play at the weekend. Mudryk played at 9. I think that's avoidable. Personally, he's dipped massively in price. It's about 6.5 or something now, Mudryk.
Wow.
I'd be really cautious of that. I think potentially, if Sterling's not available, then he could be a good one for free hitters. Otherwise, I wouldn't go near it. The Chelsea attacker I'd buy right now is Havertz. Yes, we're back here again. So 0.1 cheaper than Felix. Felix was taken off at half-time at the weekend, which Potter described as it being a tactical decision because he wanted a more aggressive player off the ball, i.e., to be fair, with Conor Gallagher being a replacement, I can understand that. Havertz, we know now, is on the pens. He's also been drifting more and more into wide positions. He basically played as the right-hand forward in this game. I actually think that's good for him rather than being the 9. I think he's one of them players who you don't really want to restrict him to back to goal because his movement off the ball is really good. Although basically with his goal, he kind of drops back in from a number 9 position from offside, gets back on. Enzo flicks him a lovely pass over the top and he finishes it well. I think the attacking one I would want this week is Havertz. So I could definitely foresee free hitters going for Watkins, Kane, Havertz as a front three this week. I think that's probably the most popular choice of free hitters. I definitely think Chilwell. And if you are free hitting, I think you're going to want a third one. And then it's take your pick. Are you happy to be aggressive about it with Reece James? Do you want Kepa in goal? Do you want a second offensive player? I think you're more likely to want the double defence, I think, considering the opponents as well.
Double defence is what I'd look at.
The other ones who've got a bit of a headache is Badia Shill owners. So obviously he hasn't been registered in the Champions League. So there was kind of a belief of, we'll keep playing in the Premier League. Well, despite the fact Thiago Silva's not available, obviously Cucurella kept his place at the weekend against Leicester. I know I didn't watch the game against Dortmund, but I know he was given the man of the match and played very well. And he'd been getting quite a bit of stick off Chelsea fans. So it's quite plausible that he'll just stay in the team at the moment to help build up some confidence in him. That's an ugly one, I think, because if you've got Badiashile going into this week, you're inclined to, I think, to want to keep it, whereas it might be a hit to get rid of it. All I'd say is, if you can afford it, I'd consider the sideways and upwards to Chilwell and be aggressive about it because there's certainly upside there, isn't there?
Let's talk about your game at White Cart Lane, or whatever we call it these days. 3-1.
White Cart Lane, listen to you, mate.
Go-karting. Well, listen, I've got worse names for it, but we won't go there.
I tell you what, there's a few people I could drive out of that football club right now. I don't know about driving it.
We're talking about free hit, and obviously Spurs have got a decent game in 28, and a few might want to gamble on the likes of Pedro Porro. Kane is a must if you're free hitting this week, without doubt.
Is he?
I think so. I don't think it'll be easy, actually, your game away, but I think.
I think nearly everyone who free hits will go with him purely on the basis as well as it'll be affordable. Because if you don't put him in, who are you getting a value of above, say, a Saka, for example? So that alone, it's the psychological. It's, I can afford him. And we're not saying Harry Kane's bad, but the point I'm leading to is as well is I know as this week goes on, people are going to ask me about Sonny because it's also affordable, right? Heung-min Son scored 1 league goal away from home this season.
Yeah, I can
Heung-min
understand
Son
that.
would not be one of the best options for this week, in my opinion.
this result says as much about Nottingham Forest as it does about Spurs. I mean, they came
100%.
to ours and conceded 4 as well, which was pretty limp, is the best way to describe it. Yeah, what are your takeaways?
Do you know what? It's a little bit skewed by the fact that 3-0 in the last 20 minutes, Forest had a few efforts, which obviously includes the penalty. It's another one that really skews the XG at the end of the game. They were bad. Really bad. Properly average. I mean, likely to go down bad. I was trying to think if they were the worst team I'd seen at White Hart Lane this year, and probably yes. Because I think even Everton and Southampton had moments in the first half that potentially troubled us. They didn't. There's 2 games in a row we ain't conceded a shot in the first half. You know that?
Wow.
They were, our first half's a shit, but actually we played all right in the first half this time. Partly because Forest was so passive off the ball. And it's all right to sit there and frustrate, but actually we were playing through them pretty easy. Lingard lasted 45 minutes. There was a fair chance if I'd been in charge, it might not have lasted 45 minutes. It offered absolutely nothing. Gibbs White and Johnson clearly wanted to carry the team, but didn't show enough during the game. As said, Johnson might have got an injury. Defensively, they are banging trouble. I know Joe Worrell scored, but let me say that was the worst individual performance I've seen from a player at White Hart Lane this season from an away team. It's not Premier League standard. And what's interesting about it is he's the leader of that team at the moment because of the injuries to others. They've got a real big problem at centre-back. The fact that Everton scored twice against them last week as well should give you a real clear indication on that. If they don't maintain their home form, they'll go. Okay. Newcastle, Wolves, Manchester United, Brighton, Southampton, Arsenal are the remaining home games. Now, if there's every chance, a little bit like with Everton, those 2 teams, I think particularly, could do well enough in home games that they'll stay up. But it was very clear for me to see at the weekend why Forest have only scored 3 Premier League away goals prior to this weekend. Now, they could have made it 5 by the end, part through sloppiness of us on a set piece defending a corner, and also obviously Jordan Ayew had the penalty, who I was very surprised was the person designated to take that because he's got a bit of a history of missing key penalties over recent years, including penalties for Ghana. They were bad, Such. Really bad, not good. And it doesn't mean they can't beat Newcastle on Friday night, right? It's a home game. It's different. But I look at them away games. It's what we said about Leeds. Oh, yeah, rough double. They've got Arsenal, Snarks. They've got Forest at home in the second fixture. Forest go to Leeds, Villa, Liverpool, Brentford, Chelsea, Palace. They're away games. On what I saw at the weekend, I don't know where they get anything in them games. So they're going to have to keep being good at home. Absolutely woeful defensively. And in midfield, no energy. Especially with your man, Hollywood, John Joe Shelby in midfield. Every time he gets on the ball, you look at him and you think, I know he wants to play a 60-yard pass here. I feel his pain. When he plays a 10-yard pass, I feel his pain. He wants to play a Hollywood pass all the time. And do you know what? If you're a possession-based team, he did really good for Newcastle, right? When they begin to dominate. Sit there like a quarterback, ping the ball out to your likes of St. Maximin and Almiron and stuff. Brilliant, right? They're not going to dominate the majority of games. And it means for me, offensive players off the ball are going to give Forest massive problems if he plays there. He needs another enforcer with him. I actually thought Mangala was probably the best of their midfield 3 in the first half, and he got hooked at half-time as well. So, yeah, they weren't good, Such. No. You wouldn't be looking at them on a free hit other than maybe Gibbs White, differential punt, if you like that sort of thing. Chris Wood came on a sub, got injured within seconds.
Oh, wow.
He literally came on, and at the first, he was on the floor within seconds. He tried to carry on, bless him. And Cooper said, actually, I think it was his thigh or his quad, which happens to be the same thing, had flared up pretty badly, actually. And he was really trying to carry on and just couldn't. So Forest might also be short offensively. We've got no Johnson or Wood at the weekend. That's what also could make Gibbs White quite interesting because he will become the clear talisman if Johnson is out. But I think you'd more be looking at Newcastle players. 4 Tottenham players I'd consider for free hitters. Forster in goal. as your substitute
3.9,
goalkeeper.
cheap,
Let me be clear on that. Your substitute goalkeeper. Pedro Porro at 4.8. It's very reasonably priced. I don't think people would be buying him per se because there's no double in 29. I think the only Tottenham player you would actually be buying is Harry Kane, or perhaps Forster if you're not bench boosting 29, perhaps bench boosted this week, want to save some money, for example. But it's Forster, Porro, Son, Kane. Sonny will be affordable for people, and I think just on that alone for free hitters, the longer the week goes on, he'll become more and more popular, particularly if Southampton have a bad result on Wednesday against Brentford. If Brentford go there and win 3-0, for example, then it will really pick up interest in Sonny. Interestingly, Tottenham did actually do something a little bit different tactically in this game. Richarlison and Son, much narrower, much closer to Kane. Kane dropping off as we like. Those two looking to get in behind. Richarlison's obviously played instead of Kulusevski. He's a very different player and was obviously unlucky to have the goal disallowed really early on because he finished it quite well. His performance was much better. He worked really hard. Still a bit sloppy with his touch quite a lot, Richarlison, but played absolutely fine. Again, to take the opposition into factor with that, though. They played a lot narrower. I wonder if we might see a little bit more of that. It definitely looks offensively better. They also cheated defensively. It was only really in the second half it kind of funneled back into 5-4-1, which part let Forest into the game. They cheated. It stayed high, played like a real front three, whereas often the two wide players for Tottenham end up back in kind of fullback positions and stuff. That didn't really happen in this game. And it meant when we broke on them, it was a little more devastating than what we were doing. Now, I think it might be because of the opponent. I'm not saying that's going to continue necessarily against Southampton, who, in the likes of Walker Peters and Proud, have very offensive fullbacks. I imagine that's probably not going to be the same. Kulusevski would be completely avoidable, though. I suspect Richarlison probably will play again. The atmosphere was quite eerie. We'll talk about it more on Tottenham. But what massively, massively helped Antonio Conte on Saturday was Liverpool losing. Because I was in the ground watching the end of that game, and visibly it changed the atmosphere in the concourses. The fact that Liverpool had lost, it gave us a purpose for the day to go, right, we can go clear of them. Talking of which, here's the bit where I guarantee you that Tottenham won't win at Southampton at the weekend. Because if we win, unbelievably, we go third. And I know what this team does when it has opportunities in front of them. They piss it up the wall.
Let's talk about Crystal Palace, Man City. Man City are clearly not on anybody's radar with the blank coming up in 28, a single against Liverpool in 29 at home. Unless you're owning and you're just kind of holding through the likes of Haaland, no one's really going in particularly. And Crystal Palace aren't in the best form, but losing just 1-0 at home to Man City isn't shameful, let's say, particularly. And they didn't pepper them with loads of chances. 3 big chances, 2 missed, but only 4 shots on target in the game for Man City. Although the XG is obviously massive.
Palace haven't had a shot on target for about a month.
Yeah, I know. That's the interesting stat for them, isn't it? That awful.
It's the first time since Opta recorded statistics on record that a team's gone 3 games in a row without a shot on target. I think Tottenham nearly achieved it under Nuno, didn't they? I think.
Yeah, there was a period.
Anyway, on City assets, I mean, other than you want to keep through Haaland this week, it's nearly all going, isn't it? Or perhaps if you've got Edison still, you're keeping it on the bench this week, for example. And of course, you can bench your City players this week. Of course, you can. Particularly, again, for those perhaps not bench boosting. Because I feel like with Liverpool at home, the only one you'd be really comfortable using as a bench boost. Haaland, of course, is absolutely fine as part of a bench boost in 29. Of course, he is, particularly as it's at home as well. But yeah, no real interest in City, but they'll become quickly of interest, I think, from 30. Obviously, Southampton away, Leicester at home. But we should factor in as well, it's highly likely to be a blank in 32. Then it's Arsenal 33. And those who come off Haaland who have not done it yet, you should be aware. You're either going back 30, 31. And I think if you don't go 30, you probably don't go 31. There's a chance you don't go back till 34. It's a long time. And I was at peace with that decision. I assume, Sid, you were also at peace with that decision, if that's what it comes to. Because you have to remember, the thing is, when you get to 30, you go, right, Southampton away, I've got to get him back. Rashford's got Everton at home. Let's not pretend there's not alternatives for captaincy, right?
Choice, yeah.
When Haaland's got, you think, I'll wait a week. I'll go Kane to Haaland the next week. Okay, Haaland's got Leicester. Yeah, Kane's also got Bournemouth.
Mm.
So, and that was this was also part of my reasoning for not going Kane in the first place, was actually just want to leave my options open, because I know landing from here onwards, getting rid of Harry, tough.
Yeah.
Tough. Like, if you're an owner of Harry Kane, not selling him this week, do you sell him in 29? I think a lot of people will consider doing that in 29, move him on to a forward who's got a double, and then move that straight on to Haaland in 30. Fine, of course. But moving Kane to Haaland in 30 to 31 might be quite difficult, that's all. He's still not quite at his best.
Nor a City.
No, but I tell you what, though, I thought actually might sound silly. I thought defensively they were outstanding. Mm-hmm. Because what Palace are, and we realised that it might sound a bit weird because Palace have not been a threat going forward. What are they good at? On the break, right?
Yep.
They funnel it in behind you. You get Zaha one-on-one with people. They get the crowd up, etc. City allowed one moment right at the end of the game, just after Kyle Walker had come on, where Zaha managed to get Walker isolated 1v1. Other than that, they locked that whole game down. They were never under any threat at all. And it's because defensive structure of them was very, very good. And we should consider going forward, and this also applies to Arsenal, that the more the pressure builds, the more we might see lower scoring games with the two teams involved. Arsenal yesterday didn't look like that, of course, right? And perhaps if Man City had scored early, maybe it wouldn't have looked that way for Man City at the weekend. But I think we should be conscious of that. I think both teams will probably improve defensively once we get into sort of April, May. But Arsenal have got tougher fixtures than City, in my opinion. But yeah, defensively, really strong. Stones played right back. He came inverted next to Rodri. It was Akanji, therefore right-sided centre-back. Diaz, essentially, Aki to the left. Probably the notable one for people, not they overly matters for FPL at the moment, is Kevin De Bruyne didn't play. Now, for those who but for those who listened to my conversation with Luke on the People's Poll, was it last week or the week before?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
We should not be surprised about this. People say, Palace didn't play a back five. No, they didn't. But Palace will be deep. They will be deep, and they will not allow clear structure in terms of a back and forth game of football. Mm-hmm. Kevin De Bruyne will start against Liverpool. Fairly certain of that. And those who are looking to invest in perhaps other City players for 29 should be cautious of that. Almost definitely he'll play against Liverpool. Luke, if you're listening, if I'm wrong, correct me, but I'm pretty sure he'll agree with me on that one. What Palace did was they changed their own system a little bit, and what made City's game really difficult and tough was Lokonga and Schlupp did man-to-man jobs respectively on Gundogan and Bernardo Silva. And though Milivojevic was the deepest of the midfield players, he was the one tasked to come out to Rodri, which is also why, for anybody who watched the game, probably thought that's the most I've ever seen Rodri dribble with a football during a game. Yeah, that's part of the reason why, because he couldn't release the ball properly to his 2-8s, and actually he knew he had the beating of Milivojevic. Important win for City. Not at their best, but this is one of them. If they've won the title at the end of the season, you go, yeah, didn't even happen. No one cares. Yeah, exactly that, basically.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Sunday games. We've got 4 more to get through here, James. Fulham 0, Arsenal 3. I mean, this was as one-sided as you could want it, especially in the first half.
You might have wanted it. I didn't.
By the time,
fucking painful viewing, man.
By the time I'd gotten over the not that I own Martinelli, goal being disallowed for offside, the first one, they'd fucking scored two more. And I'd seen, I'd got sent a stat by Clayton that Fulham didn't touch the ball in Arsenal's half in the first half.
That can't.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's 100% true. He said he's
in their half. Stat. No, 100%. Ramsdale gave Pereira the ball like 10 yards from goal and fucked it up. So that can't be right, mate. Maybe in the box, maybe. Even maybe that, I feel like that was in the box, maybe. Anyway.
Either way, this was one-sided, and Arsenal demolished them in the first half, and that was it. Game over.
To be honest, this looked like one of them for a period. Like it could be a 6 or 7. And there's no blame on Arsenal for taking their foot off their pedal a little bit, particularly with Europa. You're going to be conscious of that. If they can get in themselves into these positions where they can make games really easy for themselves, then they can pick a strong team again on Thursday. I'm sure they'll do that. It'll be mix and match, and then you got Palace Sunday. Probably means Arsenal players should probably be avoided as early transfers this week. Because don't be surprised if you like some Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard play on Thursday. They really may well do. The difference between the two teams, absolutely fucking massive. Odegaard now, interestingly, has joined Martinelli and Saka on 10+ goals this season. We both sold, didn't we, Serge, I think?
I did, yes, but I owned him in Sky, so, I'm still celebrating a little bit.
I also own him in Sky, and I also was not celebrating because that would just be a little bit weird, wouldn't it? But it's interesting that's obviously really covered up the absence of Jesus. And also very recently, Leandro Trossard, who we thought was going to be out this weekend, also has made a big difference. He's now doing what Jesus was doing earlier in the season, which is the crossover with Martinelli, where they swap positions. And it's interesting. I didn't look at the numbers, and I should have, sorry. But I don't know if Martinelli's numbers dipped a little bit under Nketiah and look like they're coming back again with Trossard in the team. Trossard, 3 assists. He's the first player since Santi Cazorla, another Arsenal player, to get a hat-trick of assists and a hat-trick in the same Premier League season. And Leandro Trossard even managed his feat with 2 different teams. He obviously scored a hat-trick for Brighton at Liverpool earlier in the season. And if you were free hitting this week, my question to you, Sid, would be, which 3 Arsenal would you go for?
Ooh. I would pick 2 attacking and 1 defensive, just for the balance. I'd probably stick with Gabriel or Saliba. And actually, Zinchenko is the one that I would go with. I still like Zinchenko. I'd go with Saka, talisman and penalties. And I'd go with Martinelli. He's just in a little bit of form at the moment. And he's found his shooting boots. So I think Saka, Martinelli and Zinchenko. But there is no right or wrong here.
No. I mean, there's
no right or wrong here. They're all viable.
There's probably 7 decent choices. I think you could add Ben White to that, perhaps subject to minutes. Yeah. The only thing I'd say with Ben White is you'll have Zaha drifting out that side. And does that make them think they want to play Tomiyasu a little bit more? But I think by the way that City set up, Arsenal can do the same thing with Ben White, should they want to. That could mean a start for Kieran Tierney, possibly against Crystal Palace, by the way, which would also make me a bit nervous about Zinchenko, possibly. Therefore, Gabriel would be the choice, I think, of Arsenal defensive this week. To be honest, Saka, Odegaard, Martinelli, Trossard. I think any of them. To be honest with you, I think the best 2 for this week specifically might be Martinelli and Trossard. If I was free hitting. Probably, I don't think I could buy Trossard now that Jesus is fit. But I think for a free hit, I'd be very interested with that. I don't think Jesus will start against Palace. I think they're going to ease him in. Then you've got that international break and look at potentially getting him ready. Trossard's form and the way he's playing and the way that's bringing the best out of Martinelli doesn't deem that they need to rush this in any way at all. I mean, that front 4 is great. He had good overlaps with Odegaard and Saka. Even Odegaard going to the right-hand side and bringing Saka inside as well. But not happening to quite the same extent. And because I think that's a regular crossover in Martinelli Trossard, you're getting Saka staying out wide a little bit more. And he was certainly the quietest of the 4. Yes, he didn't play badly. He was just the quietest of the 4. That could easily switch back up. I would say Tyreek Mitchell, I think, and I always think, he's a decent 1v1 defender.
Yeah,
and that's also good. Something maybe for free hitters to bear in mind. He's something for me who's considering captain Saka should bear in mind, and that's why I'm considering people like Chilwell and Watkins as alternatives. And I think it's another reason why Harry Kane will be really highly captained this week.
Did you see Arteta's comments on Trossard post game?
No, I tend not to listen to him. I don't like him much.
Especially when he's winning. He did say that they didn't think that Trossard was going to be fit, and he pushed really hard to get himself fit, which is the kind of thing where you end up playing with an injection or 2 just to get you through. Like, he really pushed to get himself on the pitch. Now, if he's gone and done that, you don't know what the aftermath is going to be. And now if Jesus is fit and Trossard was carrying an injury but forced himself and doesn't need to, maybe they say, right, okay, well, we got through that game. If get yourself right, and we won't force it this week necessarily. You can't tell, but he did say that, you said Trossard wasn't going to be available. Well, it was touch and go, and
that's how it looks. Yeah.
Through. So,
oh no, he wasn't completely ruled out, but the impression we got on, I think most people had on Thursday, Friday, was he wasn't going to make it, which didn't make much difference to most people for FPL. And I think Trossard, as I said, I think it'd be really difficult to buy, but I think for free hitters, like, wait till after Thursday, make your choice there. Reality is the game of Sunday is more important. I know Arsenal will want to go through on Thursday, and they probably will, but Sunday's more important.
Agreed.
There's a chance to go 8 points clear, right? Because obviously City don't play. Obviously it puts City then with a game in hand, but now you start, once you
points
get
on the board at this stage, you're worth
once you start getting to the distance that's more than games left, and we're not at that point yet, but it becomes extremely challenging. Absolutely. For Fulham, sum this up in one word: Paulinho. Have conceded 10 of their 37 goals this season in the 3 games that he hasn't played. We can all do the average on 3.33 goals conceded per game there, as opposed to just over 1 when he does play. Jesus Christ, they look so bad without him. He's so important. Even Marco Silva said after the game, he just gets to the ball quick. Everything's quicker with him in the team, both on and off the ball. I didn't think Lukic was particularly bad, or Harrison Reed, but neither of them were Paulinho. It's such a miss. Now, importantly, obviously, he's back for game week 29. They blanked this week, so there's nothing important for FPL managers this week. But yeah, that'll be a difference for them. Game week 29, they go to Bournemouth. What I would say about them is they've got a really good run of fixtures. Bournemouth, West Ham, Everton, Leeds from 29 to 32, as long as they lose to Man United in the FA Cup. And it's worth saying, in terms of assuming United win in the Cup, don't now, with Casemiro suspended and Paulinho back for that one. Segue, Such.
It is the most surprising result of the weekend. Manchester United 0, Southampton 0. Now, maybe less surprising because Casemiro.
No, the most surprising thing of the weekend was Tottenham scoring first half goals, mate.
Maybe for you, for the rest of us. I mean, Casemiro got sent off quite early, so it does mean that it wasn't like about Fast's 3 minutes from full time kind of red card that didn't massively impact the result. But here, losing Casemiro early did have an impact. And credit to Southampton for picking up another point. And they're kind of clicking back into some sort of rhythm and gear at Southampton. I think they're quietly under the radar, slowly clawing their way out. I know they look bottom of the table, but the gap is nothing now.
As I just said, they played twice this week. Yeah, you don't play, for example, right? So, and then their next game afterwards is against you.
Yeah.
Imagine the difference if they were to, it's unlikely, but if they were to win all 3 games, right?
Yeah. Then suddenly they're looking at
be miles clear of you, Such.
7 points clear of us. They're 2 behind right now. So, yeah, Casemiro being injured is a big problem for Manchester.
Suspended, sorry,
for 4 games.
He does a 4-game ban. That's because it's obviously second red of the season. So he'll miss the cup game. He'll miss both of game week 29. He'll miss game week 30, which is at home to Everton. He'll be available again from the game week 31 trip to Nottingham Forest. Now, the impact for United assets is, I've already mentioned about Bruno Fernandes. That's massive. Because if he's going to play in that position, which he started in deeper yesterday anyway, no interest. Now, I'm not sure in any case that, let's say McTominay and Fred start the cup game against Fulham and Fernandes goes back to 10. Does that even tell us that's what's going to happen in 29? No. And admittedly, Fernandes nearly scored yesterday, right? He had an effort from outside the box, which Bazzuno tipped onto the inside of the post. Comfortably could have gone in. And he still created some chances during the game as well, despite picking up that really deep role and United being a man short. And that's because he is to be on a lot of the set pieces and stuff like that as well. So it doesn't make him bad, but do I want to pay that money for a guy that's going to sit deeper? So I think the knock-on effect of that is that when we get to 29, because of value, I think it will possibly make the likes of Salah, Gakpo more interesting when 29 comes around. So we have to be aware of that. I don't really want to pay 9.5 or whatever he is if he's going to play central midfield rather than an offensive role. And because of the fixtures, particularly the Newcastle away game, he might. You say, well, particularly against Newcastle, he played deep. Yeah, he might. Yeah. For control, actually, yes. And it also makes United's defensive assets less appealing as well, just not having Casemiro in the team, right? So Luke Shaw was kind of a penciled-in transfer for me in 29 with Fernandes. That needs some thought now, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, I think those are still probably the best three heading towards 29 would probably be Shaw, Fernandes, Rashford. But that needs a little bit more thought now. They still could have won this, in fairness. So could Southampton as well. Cole Walker-Peters hit the post. I've watched extended highlights of all the games at the weekend because obviously there wasn't much going on BBC at the weekend. This could have gone either way. And it's not a terrible result for United because obviously they played for so long with 10 men. And I can hear the Wolves fans going, yeah, but we came from 1-0 down against Southampton and 1-2-1. Yeah, but Nathan Jones was in charge there. And so far under Ruben Sellés, it's 3 clean sheets in 4. The only goal they conceded was that kind of awkward goal they conceded to Leeds, scored by Junior Firpo. So it's 3 clean sheets, 1 goal conceded so far, 7 points in the 4 games. Big week for them with 2 home games against Brentford and Tottenham because, to be honest with you, they could easily win them both. They could easily lose them both.
Yeah, agreed.
West Ham. I beat just for Kane captainers. Honestly, just give it some thought. So see how you feel after Wednesday night when we played against Brentford. Like if Southampton keep another clean sheet, we can't look at them on what's gone and gone, oh my God, over 28 weeks they've been the worst for XGC. No, let's look at over Ruben Sellés' period, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. 4 or 5 games, yeah, for sure. Let's move on to the London Stadium. West Ham 1, Aston Villa 1. Or we should almost kind of say Said Benrahma 1, Aston Villa 1, because it felt like he
10 shots. Blimey.
Well, we know that he likes to shoot on sight.
He does.
And he's particularly good from outside the box. He does have a nice clean strike on him. It felt like I don't know. He just had been given the instruction: if you get the ball and you get a chance to pop it off, just have a shot and do it. But this is kind of a little bit more. It felt like West Ham of old in terms of playing on the counter attack, because Aston Villa did have the majority of the possession, like nearly 60% possession. West Ham 3 big chances, missed 2 of them, 6 shots on target. We had more attacking threat. I mean, the XG is skewed by the goals, but they had more of the possession, and we got back to trying to hit them on the counter attack a little bit.
XG is also skewed by the pen, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
It looked like probably just about a fair result from the bits I saw last night. I think Zuma being back is obviously a big positive for you.
Yeah.
Kehrer obviously played at right back. I think Benrahma probably has put his hand up to have a look at for game week 29 at 5.5 million, particularly say, I'm just trying to imagine here that say the Brighton asset you've got and you haven't got money in the bank was to get injured at the weekend in the cup.
Yeah.
And you look at 29 and you go, oh, okay, maybe it's not another Brighton player. Maybe it's Benrahma instead. I think West Ham players, interestingly, will fall into a category where they're really of interest for people who don't intend to free hit in 32. The problem is you've got Bournemouth away in 32, which is not the easiest game. We've seen that from the Liverpool result of the weekend. But after the double, if you remove the Bournemouth game, it's Fulham away, Arsenal at home, Liverpool at home, Palace away, United at home, Brentford away. Like, it's not a good run. It's the Bournemouth game right in the middle of that makes it look like a better run of fixtures. So if you're free hitting 32, I think that's quite off-putting for West Ham assets for 29. You would definitely buy Benrahma over Bowen at the moment. Although I noted from what I saw last night, so regular big switch of play from Aguerd to Bowen, looking for him quicker. But then quite often it's Bowen hitting the byline, and so then pulling back to the likes of Ings or Benrahma.
Who's coming on the back post will be Benrahma.
The reports I had yesterday said Danny Ings was not good, but I also understand David Moyes is not very happy with Schumacher at the moment. And Antonio's obviously had a little bit of a setback, we think, as well.
Well, yeah, Antonio scored 2 goals on Thursday night, and now suddenly he's got a setback. Oh.
Sorry, mate. Well, at least he'll do his
What'd
podcast
you
with
do?
Callum. Him and Callum
You
Wilson
can.
both out the team now, so
Yeah, I
they
know.
can
They
enjoy
can
their
rib
podcast.
each other
Exactly
more. The only thing with Ben Rama is that that's where Maxwell Cornet would play, and he did come on for a few minutes and is fit.
Please, game week 29 is how far away? Maxwell Cornet won't be
He's
fit by
not
then,
going to
mate.
stay fit. He's not going to stay fit. I know it. But he did get back on the pitch, which was a positive because in the games that he has played, he has always offered a threat. He just hasn't played any bloody games this season. Aston Villa, on the other hand, Ollie Watkins is on fire.
Yeah, he's definitely the go-to one. I had a look at his returns in Emery's 10 games. He's got 8 returns in those 10 games, averaging 6.3 FPL points per start. The games he started under Emery, there was one there with a substitute appearance, which I left out. He won't be a substitute against Bournemouth at the weekend. He'll definitely start. He's a good one for the double as well. There's no reason to think he won't start both games in the double. And actually, his returns away from home are good. He's been for a long time not a player who relies on, he gets all his returns in home games. So the 2 away games are not terrible. And it's Forest at home in 30 as well. So there's a number of reasons to mean Ollie Watkins will be one of the most transfers in this week. Like if you're wildcarding this week, I do not know how you don't pick him, for example. He's doing really well. Form's good. Even if it's just for the 3 weeks and you've got a plan to move that to whatever in 31, fine, because that might be part of my strategy. But yeah, he's definitely the go-to one at the moment. Interesting notes on the selection at the weekend. So my wife is shouting at my son, which is in no way off-putting at all. McGinn played deeper in the absence of Kamara. Now, Kamara, the injury's not as bad as feared. He may even be back for possibly even this weekend. Probably 29 is more likely. Now, McGinn playing deeper meant that Bailey and Buendia both started. The caution I'd have on this as well, West Ham are such a negative team with the ball, and I don't even mean that disrespectfully, but you don't go and press, you sit off, right? Means that you could afford to play a player like that a little bit more who would run beyond West Ham rather than being concerned about running back the other way. So I know, for example, Chambers played later in the game. Bournemouth actually have runners. We've mentioned this earlier in the likes of Billin and Utara, for example. So I wouldn't be certain that McGinn plays again against Bournemouth. Well, let me say, I wouldn't be certain he plays again in that position because I think if he doesn't play in that position, he plays higher. And therefore, Bailey would possibly miss out. Now, if you've got Bailey in your squad, great, you got him this week. He'll definitely be involved as long as he's fit. And as long as he's not pushing people over for dodgy penalties being given away and stuff. You do love a dodgy penalty, didn't you, Sid? You're a lot. It was awkward. Fine, you got it. I wouldn't be certain he starts. That's what I'd say. I think I would if I was free hitting this week, I would want to go for Buendia.
Okay.
Over Bailey. I'd pay the extra. And I think part of my principle of obviously going Chilwell last night is asking myself, right, what do I do now? If I do have to take that -4, where do I go? Where do I go with my transfer? And I think probably I'd be of the peace of mind at the moment. It would be probably defensively would probably be at this moment, Matty Cash. Midfield would be Buendia and up front would be Havertz. Those are the players I'd look to cover me off for the next couple of weeks. I think Cash over Mings, because unfortunately, we haven't got this answer with Diego Carlos. We don't know. He was back on the bench yesterday. I think he'll probably be for Konsa when he comes back in. And it might be that 28 is a good fixture to bring him back in, possibly. He's very highly rated. He was kind of Villa's standout signing, really, from last summer. And they'll want to get him in at some point. That's all, some point. It doesn't mean Mings and Konsa won't both play all of these upcoming games, but I think there's a little bit of a risk. Whereas I think now it's beginning to look like Matty Cash probably got the nod over Ashley Young, though I know that Young came on for him again during the game yesterday. So there is a little bit of an element of risk with all of them. I think Matty Cash is probably not at any risk for Bournemouth this weekend. He may be for 29. I mentioned about possibly last week about going against Barnes. He might want Ashley Young for that fixture in 29. But I'd probably gamble Matty Cash at the moment for the upside.
Newcastle 2, Wolves 1 to wrap up the games, James. I really wanted a Newcastle clean sheet. I'm sure a lot of people who still own Newcastle
It's another
defenders
one.
here and there do, but
shouted goal when Wolves scored. A, because it was funny, and B, I didn't
you
want
want to
more.
go fourth.
Wait, there's that, and C, I didn't want the Botman points on the bench to go with the Gabriel ones.
Yeah, I mean, did Botman have a shot towards the end as well? That
should have scored, yeah. Should have scored.
Yeah, but Newcastle will be happy to break their hoodoo because they've been on a little bit of a bad run at the moment and back to winning ways at St James's. Trips with the assist, even if he's not getting clean sheet points, he'll still
Brilliant
tick along
header
nice,
though from Isak. I know it's a good delivery, but it's a super header.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of the headline. He's in for Callum Wilson. I'd said last week, a few of our Newcastle patrons kind of tried to talk me out of getting Callum Wilson, and although it would have worked for me last week, I'm probably quite thankful for that decision at the moment. Not that Iheanacho is doing a lot better for me, but I think Isak now will be of serious interest to buy this week. So I think he probably falls below Watkins, I think, in terms of coverage for the next couple, in my opinion. But it would certainly be people who will prefer Isak over Havertz, for example. 6.6, great price. It's going to be obtainable for most people. I think that's very, very interesting. I would imagine the way he played yesterday and performed in the first half, that he would stay in the team for the Forest game. And I imagine as long as his fitness is okay, he will do so for forthcoming games now. No Newcastle fans have been telling me Callum Wilson not looked right over recent weeks since he'd been back. Kieran Trippier, I guess, will be in nearly every team this game week. So if you want to get something out of the defensive, you should look at a second one. Fabian Schär has the bigger upside, but he's more expensive. Obviously came back into the team yesterday. Botman and Burn, you could flip a coin over at 4.5. Slight preference on Botman. Joe Willock's an interesting one, 4.7. Yep. For this week, I would say, because obviously Joe Linton's still suspended this week for 29. Obviously, Joe Linton could come back in for him. But when he plays, his underlying numbers are good. We've mentioned that a few times, was referenced to us before the World Cup, that his data, Joe Willock's pretty good. He's obviously assisted the winning goal yesterday, and it was a really good assist as well. Jacob Murphy started, it's 4.1. Now, to guarantee that he starts against Forest at the weekend, no, I can't do that. But I think he's another one. If you're going 3 up front, and you're only going sort of Trippier and Botman, for example, stick him on the bench, 4.1. You'll get your minutes. Probably sit third bench, absolutely fine. But if he starts, potentially interesting. We think he started because his cameos had been quite impressive for Newcastle, so he was rewarded with the start. But then Almiron's come on for him and scored the winner, right?
Yeah, so I was going to say,
I imagine Almiron will come back in.
Almageddon getting back into the team. And their game's not too bad. Like Forest away, United at home without a Casemiro, and then West Ham away. It's a decent 3. Again, you're talking about if your Brighton player got injured, and we mentioned Ben Rama. I mean, Almiron's cheaper than Ben Rama by 0.1. One to consider.
It's cheaper than Buendia as well. Yeah, I wouldn't rule Almiron out. I imagine he probably will. Did you see the celebration?
No.
It's a bit Maradona-esque. Personally, I'd have had him in the dressing room doing a wee straight after that. But we like Miggy Almiron. He's had a good season. Those who've got, I think for those who've got, yeah, definitely hold. But I'd say probably don't be concerned. He'll probably start against Forest if that's what you're worried about. He probably will do. And he'll probably start both in the double as well. But I've got more options now with St. Maximin being back fit. Willock's form means they can put him or Joel Linton to the left of the front 3. Obviously, you've got Wilson and Isak. So now in the forward positions, Newcastle have kind of really got options. Anthony Gordon's injured for a couple of weeks. Definitely won't be involved this weekend. And probably not game week 29 either. That's probably the best news for Almiron. Not that I'd say Gordon would necessarily play that side, but it's a ball carrier like what he is. So I imagine Almiron should be okay for this period. Yeah, I wouldn't rule him out, Such, especially what I saw of Forest at the weekend. But I also realise that's probably a different Forest you'll get as they're at home. It's a Friday night. It will be a banging atmosphere at the City Ground, etc. But yeah, reasonable. I don't know which one I'd go to, at the moment, offensively, Newcastle. Probably would be Almiron. Probably.
I like Isak. But then you've got Watkins, Tony, Kane or Haaland. There's other options available in the forward slots there.
I mean, I could definitely consider Isak instead of Iheanacho, for example. And I may well do at some point. So I wouldn't rule him out. Almiron's not going to work in the same way, I think, for me, unless if one of the Brighton players got injured on Wednesday night that I've got. Guess, yeah, I know I said it'd be Buendia, but I guess the Almiron would be right in contention actually for a short period, especially with Newcastle as well. Maybe the 31 double as well, possibly.
Cool. James, that's a wrap of the 10 games that we had at the weekend. Obviously, we've got the 2 on Wednesday night. Do you want to let the listeners know the plan for the week in terms of the schedule? I'll give Patient a plug. I've got the Twitter questions open in front of me. There's a few that we can cover off today as well.
Are there any on Match of the Day?
No.
Okay, well, while I'm doing what the schedule is for this week, Suj, please get yourself on Twitter and just have a little search for a bit of Gary Lineker news, mate, because there's been a bit of an update this morning. Just very briefly on Wolves, changed to a back three after they equalised, and it didn't go as well as against Newcastle as it did against Tottenham. Yeah, they were well in the game, and we should have said, obviously, Pope was so lucky not to get sent off in the first half as well. I mean, for me, probably should go there, to be totally honest. I think that's a red card more often than it's not, and obviously would have been a penalty to Wolves as well. Anyhow, schedule this week. What we got for you tomorrow? Clash of Correspondents is 2 this week. Chelsea versus Everton with Gary Mantle and Sean Norton tomorrow, and Lee Jackson and Neil Grover for Villa versus Bournemouth on Thursday. So I think particularly for free hitters and even those bench position 29, particularly info on Chelsea Villa, I think would be very appreciated by many. Wednesday, Sky Fantasy Football. It is a Friday deadline, as I mentioned, so I'm going to stream Ask James 9:30 a.m. on YouTube. We'll have an audio out to you off the stream about 11 o'clock in the morning, so you've got time before the deadline. I also will do the deadline stream on Friday night at 5:30 p.m. UK time, with a caveat that I do have trains booked for Southampton on Saturday, and if them trains are cancelled, I might need to go on the Friday night instead. And in which case, there won't be a deadline stream if that happens. Patron Q&A today. Tomorrow, Barcelona, money in football. What have you done now? Some dodgy payments. Why are we surprised? Wednesday will be Tottenham. Thursday will be a quiz on one season wonders, because Harry Kane, why not? And Friday will be our Game Week 28 differential show preview. The advanced tier content this week will include the unanswered Qs today, Chip Talk tomorrow, looking at Game Week 28 wildcard, Game Week 28 free hit, talking tactics on Leeds versus Brighton on Wednesday, team news stream Friday, and Thursday Twitter stories, because Wednesday's going to blow up with those 2 games, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. Good content coming at you across all of the different platforms. If you want to join our Patreon and support the show, help keep the lights on, we'd love to have you over there. You get access to our Slack channel. There is a fixture planner that James produces. There are prize leagues. There are fans and correspondents for every single team that are available to ask questions. So much more additional stuff. And it only starts at a few quid a month if you are interested. So head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL. We'd love to have you there. Cool. James, just to touch on this Gary Lineker thing, basically he's back at the BBC from this weekend. He's going to abide by their social media guidelines whilst an independent review takes place for them to understand that maybe their guidelines are shit. That's that.
Yeah, I mean, Lineker, from the time recordings, put a statement out a little while ago confirming that news and stuff. So to say that, I think in essence that it's done now, it's fine. I think it was really important the BBC got it sorted because they've got 2 live FA Cup games this weekend. So they had to get something sorted for that as well. I think the BBC fucked themselves so badly. Just polarized everybody, didn't they? And it was one rule against Lineker versus other rules for other people when they speak about different political parties and stuff. And I think at the end of the day, it's his Twitter account. I don't think there was anything particularly bad with what he said.
This whole, I mean, whether or not you agree with his immigration policy or anybody's immigration policy or anything that happens, not just in this country, but around the world, with so many sports people get vilified or told to, I remember with LeBron and stuff like that, shut up and dribble is a famous Laura Ingraham statement. Bullshit. Like, you say sports and politics shouldn't mix, but then politicians make comments about sport and get involved in the thing. If you want it both ways, well, then you can't have an independent regulator of football coming from the government, because then they're interfering in sport. and you can't have sports people making comment about
by the
politics.
way, we need that.
Well, exactly. I think when we say sports people shouldn't mix with politics, I think we forget the people element of it. Everybody's an individual, and everybody's entitled to an opinion, and people have a voice. I just don't think I'm for censoring because of the industry you're in or because of your profession. Certain sports people have controversial political views, and you make the choice at that point whether you support them or not, and whether you go and see them or not, and whether you're a fan and buy their merch or not. But I'm not for don't mix, because I think as soon as you say don't get across the line, you're saying you're not an individual that's entitled to an opinion on something, and everybody's an individual that is entitled to an opinion on something. And obviously, in an ideal world, you get educated and you have an informed opinion. Sometimes people don't. That's just common of everyday life. And I think the fact that they tried to shut him up in that way was the error here. And unfortunately, it's taken the attention away from the real story, which is the government's law and the policy on immigration and what have you, which is the debate we should be having, not whether or not Gary Lineker should be hosting Match of the Day. But, this is media, and this is the stories that it likes to focus on sometimes, which are not really the real story. So there you go.
From a football perspective, I'm glad that it's sorted. I think there is a place, by the way, for these 20-minute highlights. I think it'd be useful for someone like you, Suj. But yeah, I think most of us want Match of the Day on the air and stuff. I think it looks like it's a victory from Lineker. We'd literally seen the news as we're recording and stuff. But I certainly know that if he wasn't going to relent and apologise, so they've obviously relented to him. And as I said, I just think there's been so much double standards here, basically. And obviously, what did they think was going to happen? Like, we were suddenly going to go, yeah, like Chapman and Scott were suddenly going to go, I'm going to do it. And Shearer and Ian Wright, I mean, bless, Ian Wright was so obviously the first one was going to come out and go, I ain't doing that. No, definitely not. He gets even though he played for them, he gets the tone right every single time. And once Ian Wright had led on that as well, there was no one else could possibly go and do that show at the weekend. So fine. It's sorted.
Indeed. There we go. James, let's wrap the show there. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in and lending us your ears for that.
Just no questions then.
No, I mean, we've gone on for an hour and 40, James, and we've answered most of them in the conversation. And of course, if they really want to get answers to their questions, James, sign up to Patreon because you do the unanswered Qs.
It's true.
There we go. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. We're with you all week. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. As ever, play it your way. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man. Show.